Judge Lyndon Barber had been a fixture in the small town of Maple Hollow for nearly 3 decades. His reputation for fairness, kindness, and unyielding adherence to the letter of the law was well known. Each day, as sunbeams filtered through the intricately stained glass of the courthouse's atrium, Judge Barber would walk the long marble hallway with a measured step, greeting those who passed by with a warm smile and a nod that conveyed both reassurance and respect for the traditions of justice. Little did the townspeople know that on one seemingly ordinary afternoon, a court case would change the lives of everyone involved, even the judge himself, in ways they might never have imagined. It was a brisk autumn day when the call of the gavel resonated through the packed courtroom. The room was charged with expectant silence as murmurs slowly subsided before the judge's presence was acknowledged. Among the gathered were lawyers in polished suits, community members with weathered faces, and reporters eager to document every detail of what was expected to be another routine session. The case at hand involved a man known to many simply as Mr. Edwin Lowell, a pauper of humble means accused of a series of minor, albeit public disturbances during late-night hours, disturbances that had led some to suspect that he might even be a habitual drunkard. What seemed like an ordinary, even trivial matter soon unfolded into an extraordinary spectacle. Edwin Lowell entered the courtroom with a trembling gait and downcast eyes, his threadbare suit a clear contrast to the immaculate attire of those who sought justice there. His appearance had long been a subject of whispered debates among neighbors. A solitary man who roamed the alleys of Maple Hollow with a mysterious sadness wound around him like a dark cloak. Rumors had spread that he had once been someone of means, yet misfortune and choices made under duress had cast him into poverty. Those who knew him wrestled with conflicting emotions, sympathy for a life marred by hardship and a sense of responsibility to hold him accountable for his misdemeanors. As Judge Barber prepared to address the congregation, he glanced briefly at Edwin, noticing how the lines on the man's face spoke of endless nights filled with lost battles, yet also, somehow, of a dignity that refused to be wholly extinguished. The courtroom was alive with anticipation as Judge Barber cleared his throat. Today we gather not only to resolve disputes in this case, but also to reflect on what our community upholds as justice, he began solemnly. His voice was both commanding and kind, an intricate blend that made each word resonate. Mr. Edwin Lowell, you stand before us accused of disturbances that have unsettled the order of our peaceful town. How do you plead? In response, Edwin's voice, soft yet unyielding, wavered as he declared his plea. Guilty, Your Honor. A ripple of murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some frowned, satisfied by what they presumed was an inevitable reckoning, while others whispered that responsibility sometimes lay shackled to circumstance rather than intent. The proceedings took on an unexpected tone from that moment on. Judge Barber, who had presided over countless cases involving moral dilemmas and human frailties, decided that this particular hearing required a measure of unexpected levity. As he listened to Edwin retell his story of misfortune, a litany of unfortunate events, broken promises, and cruel twists of fate, the judge could not help but notice the raw honesty in the words. At one point, when Edwin recounted how he had once lost everything in the aftermath of a fraudulent business scheme and experienced the pain of public humiliation, Judge Barber's lips twitched in a peculiar way. In a moment that defied convention, the judge let out a soft, incredulous laugh. The courtroom fell hushed, and for several seconds, time itself appeared to hold its breath. Edwin's voice faltered as he looked up, his eyes glistening with a mixture of surprise and sorrow. Your Honor, he uttered timidly, is it not unseemly for a judge to laugh at a defendant's misery? Yet Judge Barber, still chuckling, quickly recovered his composure. I must apologize if my reaction appears insensitive, Mr. Lowell, he said. My laughter was not meant to mock, but rather to express the incredulity I sometimes feel at the cruel ironies of fate. The judge's words, though gentle, did nothing to quell the uncertainty that had rippled across the room. As whispers resumed, the atmosphere in the courtroom shifted subtly. Some moments felt charged with anticipation, as if the life of the case was being rewritten with each heartbeat. In the days following that memorable session, the case quickly became the talk of Maple Hollow. Neighbors gathered in dimly lit pubs and on park benches, recounting the extraordinary moment when justice had slipped into humor, all the while underscoring the somber reality of one man's sorrow. Edwin Lowell's story began to transform into something of a legend. To some, he was the archetypal victim of misfortune, a man whose fate had been irrevocably altered by circumstances beyond his control. To others, however, he symbolized resilience in the face of adversity. As the case meandered through the legal corridors of minor infractions and local ordinances, the proceedings assumed the quality of a fable, with every participant interpreting the unfolding drama through the prism of their own lives. Days turned into weeks, and during that stretch, Judge Barber found himself revisiting the details of the case even in the quiet solitude of his chambers. He began to review documents, correspondence, and even the financial records tied to Edwin's past, for there had always been hints left unspoken that the man's circumstances were not entirely as they appeared. Rumors opposite those that depicted Edwin as a fallen soul whispered about an extraordinary stroke of luck that might resurface in the twirling narratives of Maple Hollow's long-forgotten history. Judge Barber, a man of delicate sensibilities and keen insight, decided to delve deeper. He employed the modest resources of the court to secure fragmented records of Edwin's past, and to his shock, he uncovered details that defied all common expectations. The records revealed that Edwin Lowell had indeed once navigated the corridors of affluence, having grown up in comfort and later inheriting a small fortune that had vanished as swiftly as it had once been the emblem of his family's prosperity. Misfortune, hardship, and scandal had conspired with unrelenting cruelty to strip him of not only his wealth but also his standing in the society he once knew. The documents spoke of a series of unfortunate events, the collapse of a once promising business venture, the betrayal of trusted partners, and even a legal misstep that had tarnished his reputation irreparable. Yet, buried amid the chronological notes was an enigmatic detail that ultimately unsettled the archives, a discrepancy in the financial records of his inheritance account. Over months and then years, the sum that once appeared to be dwindling in Edwin's modest bank account had inexplicably grown, hidden by cryptic transactions that could be easily overlooked by an untrained eye. Fueled by a quiet, persistent curiosity, Judge Barber embarked on a personal investigation. Within the secure confines of his chambers, he pored over old ledgers and bank statements, allowing the details of the past to guide him like a thread through the labyrinth of Edwin's life. The judge's meticulous review spanned countless evenings, his focus becoming almost hypnotic as each number on the page told a part of a larger story, one in which deceit, fortune, and fate intertwined. His exploratory quest led him to consider the possibility that there was more to Edwin Lowell's life story than met the eye. As each piece of evidence slowly fell into place, a picture began to emerge that was as puzzling as it was intriguing. It told of a man seemingly condemned by life's harshest blows, yet somehow harboring an almost mystical resilience, a secret that even the casual observer might have dismissed as an anomaly. One rainy evening, as the drumming of water on the courthouse windows lent an almost cinematic quality to the quiet chambers, Judge Barber discovered a series of dormant bank statements that spanned over a decade. His eyes darted across the printed figures, each line a ghostly reminder of the past. He realized with a mounting sense of incredulity that the mysterious transactions had a cumulative value far greater than he had ever anticipated. Hidden by layers of legal and financial obfuscation, those clandestine movements of money, when aggregated, amounted to an extraordinary fortune. Barber's heart pounded in his chest as he grappled with the implications. The poor defendant he had heard sob. Stories about the man whom society had cast aside with pity and disdain was not destitute at all. In fact, Edwin Lowell was, by every measure of financial reckoning, a billionaire. The news of this startling discovery forced a re-examination of everything that had transpired in the courtroom. A mix of awe, shock, and quiet indignation swept through Maple Hollow as word spread of the revelation. The very idea that someone could be so profoundly misunderstood stirred the imagination of the townspeople. Some saw it as poetic justice, a confirmation that life's outcomes, however unpredictable, often held secrets behind their veneer of mediocrity. Others felt a simmering resentment, questioning how the system could have so utterly misjudged the essence of a man's worth. For Judge Barber, the discovery was deeply personal. His initial laugh, which in hindsight had been an act of incredulity rather than malice, now transformed into a source of profound introspection. How could he, a servant of the law and its impartial execution, have allowed his moment of human weakness, a laugh in a solemn courtroom, to become interwoven with such a consequential revelation? The trial was swiftly adjourned at the request of the district attorney, who sought to reclassify the charges upon learning of Edwin's hidden fortune. Notions of mercy and second chances, so prevalent in the local community, formed the foundation upon which a new legal strategy was built. The case now took on dimensions far beyond the original minor offenses. It was no longer merely about a man in trouble. It was about the clash of appearances with reality, of assumptions with undiscovered truths. In public meetings held in the town square and secret conversations in back alleys, the citizens of Maple Hollow debated the ethics of a system that so often mistakes poverty for criminality and misfortune for guilt. At the center of it all, Edwin Lowell himself appeared transformed. Gone was the fragile, haunted figure who had once shambled into the courtroom, replaced by a man who, despite the years of humiliation and loss, now possessed an unmistakable aura of dignity. He began to speak out about the oversight, emphasizing the importance of compassion, integrity, and the perils of making snap judgments. His testimony, delivered with a measured calm and a clarity that resonated deeply within the hearts of those who listened, recounted the intricacies of his life's tragic unraveling. Yet, he did so without bitterness. Instead, he articulated a sober wisdom, that true wealth was not limited solely to material possessions, but was also found in the human capacity to endure, adapt, and rise above circumstances that might otherwise break the spirit. This transformation in Edwin's demeanor was mirrored in the evolving attitude of Judge Barber. With each conversation he had with his colleagues and through quiet reflections in his office, the judge came to realize how deeply the brief moment of laughter had etched itself into the narrative of the case. In the dim light of evening, as the dusty volumes of law and legacy lined the shelves of his office, Barber acknowledged that that laugh was not an act of mockery, but a manifestation of the complexities of human emotion. It was as if, for a fleeting moment, the universe had offered him a glimpse of the tragic irony that often accompanies the pursuit of justice. There was an inherent poetry in the fact that he, someone revered for his strict devotion to the ethical discipline of the law, had inadvertently played a role in unveiling a secret that would forever alter the course of a man's life. In the midst of this pivotal juncture, discussions of philanthropy and restitution began to circulate. Edwin, once perceived as a destitute failure, now found himself besieged by requests from distant relatives, old business associates, and even charitable organizations that, upon learning of his newfound fortune, sought to embroil him in grand plans for societal change. Some proposals spoke of transforming Maple Hollow into a cultural hub where art, music, and wisdom could flourish. Others detailed ambitious plans to build state-of-the-art medical centers and educational institutions that might uplift the community culturally and economically. Throughout these debates, Edwin remained steadfastly humble, even as the judge found his earlier response, a laugh in the courtroom, making him feel complicit in a cosmic mix-up that seemed to underscore how disconnected society could be from the truth of a person's character. As the legal system re-examined Edwin's case, many high-ranking officials, including members of the state senate and renowned financial auditors, sought their own insights into the situation. Meetings were convened, and long hours were spent poring over documentation that linked Edwin's life to a convoluted tapestry of lost fortunes, hidden investments, and mysterious benefactors, none of whom had ever publicly claimed him. It was as if fate had orchestrated a labyrinthine puzzle designed to test the veracity of social expectations. The proceedings took on the hue of an epic narrative, one where the seemingly insignificant details of a man's life converged to form an astonishing twist in the story of wealth and despair. In a series of hushed conversations, Judge Barber confessed to a trusted confidant, the senior clerk Mr. Remington, his internal struggle with the role he had inadvertently played. "There are moments," Barber said softly one night as they sat by the warm glow of a desk lamp, "when the law and life converge in ways that make us question if we are ever truly in control of the narrative. I laughed at a man who I thought was broken, and now I realize that life's intricacies are far deeper than a single moment of levity." Mr. Remington, known for his level-headed humor, simply nodded in understanding. The old clerk had witnessed countless lives upended by the machinations of fate, and in Edwin's case, he sensed a poetic justice unfolding, a narrative in which both the judge and the defendant were helpless witnesses to the unpredictable dance of life. As the investigation continued over the following weeks, the courtroom became a stage where theory and reality collided. Heated debates arose during sessions of the local bar association, with some members hailing the case as a triumph of hidden destiny and others decrying it as evidence of systemic oversight. In public forums and side conversations in the town square, ordinary citizens recalled times when everything they had believed about their lives was suddenly contradicted by a twist of fate. In one such conversation beneath a large oak tree near the edge of town, an elderly gentleman mused, "Sometimes a laugh can be a harbinger of fate, an invitation for truth to resent its quiet hiding." His words, though simple, evoked the sense that every human moment, even one as dismissively trivial as a laugh, could carry consequences unforeseen. For Edwin Lowell, the revelation of his secret fortune came as both a burden and a liberation. His transformation was gradual, a metamorphosis where the fragile, ragged man with sorrowful eyes began to exhibit a serene confidence. In the privacy of an old friend's modest home, he was often seen gazing at old photographs of happier times when his family's legacy was not tarnished by scandal. He would trace his fingers over the faded images and recall the richness of life as it once was, all the while quietly accepting that fate had charted a different route for him. To him, the discovery was not merely a financial boon, but a chance to rewrite his destiny, to transform old wounds into new opportunities. In private interviews with local journalists, when asked if he felt any regret regarding his past, he would simply say, "Regrets are like shadows that lengthen with the setting sun. I have learned to see only the light of tomorrow." In the courtroom that was now abuzz with anticipation and narratives far grander than the original charges, the atmosphere shifted once more as the day of reconvening the trial drew near. The corridors of justice seemed to throb with a renewed intensity, a sense that history was being written in real time. Families gathered, and even travelers passing through Maple Hollow paused to observe the stirring events. It was on this day that Judge Barber, with a solemn dignity that belied the inner turmoil of recent revelations, prepared to resume proceedings. The air was thick with expectation as the judge took his place behind the bench, his eyes resting momentarily on a photograph of the courthouse from decades past, a reminder of the enduring nature of justice, even as modern complexities threatened to upend its simplicity. When Edwin Lowell was once again called to stand before the judge, he did so with the quiet confidence of a man who had been tempered by life's adversities. His eyes met Judge Barber's, and in that silent exchange, an unspoken understanding passed between them, a recognition of shared vulnerability, of humanity's capacity to err and to be redeemed. "Mr. Lowell," began Judge Barber with measured gravity, "our community has borne witness to events that have challenged every assumption we hold dear. Today, I must ask you once again to recount your story in full." His words were not laden with condemnation, but rather with a steady curiosity that invited forgiveness and truth in equal measure. Edwin's voice rang clear and unwavering as he recounted the many hardships that had defined his existence, from the collapse of dreams to the quiet desolation of inevitable loss. Yet, he spoke of these tribulations with a tone of acceptance that surprised even those who had known him all his life. His narrative was punctuated by moments of reflection that offered insights into the human condition, how pride could be as dark as despair, and how hope, even in its most fragile form, possessed the power to mend what had been broken. With every pause and every softly spoken word, the courtroom found itself transformed into a chamber of confession, forgiveness, and ultimately, of healing. As witnesses took the stand and the atmosphere shifted from one of judgment to that of reconciliation, the discovery of Edwin's secret fortune became a symbol, a metaphor for the untold stories hidden behind every human face. Legal experts debated the implications of such hidden wealth on the ethics of restitution, while financial analysts postulated on the mysterious origins of the funds. In hushed tones, members of the community envisioned a future wherein Edwin Lowell might use his rediscovered resources to benefit not just himself, but the entire town. Ideas ranged from funding local art initiatives to establishing a foundation that would ensure no citizen of Maple Hollow would ever face destitution alone. What had begun as a case filled with presumptions and whispered pity was now evolving into a movement, a call to re-examine the boundaries of empathy, the essence of wealth, and the intricate interplay between fate and free will. In the weeks that followed the courtroom revelations, the media descended upon Maple Hollow like a gathering storm. Journalists from faraway cities arrived seeking to capture the essence of a story that, on the surface, defied all expectations. In a series of televised interviews set against the backdrop of a chilly fall morning, Judge Barber spoke candidly about the nature of justice, the importance of humility, and the lessons hidden within even the smallest moments of laughter. In every verdict, he said, his voice trembling with a mix of solemnity and wonder, there is a duality, an opportunity to learn, a chance to forgive, and a possibility to transform not just a single life, but the lives of an entire community. His words struck a chord with viewers, many of whom saw in his eyes the complexity of a man who had transcended his public persona to reveal a profoundly human truth. At the same time, Edwin Lowe began to re-enter his old world with a new perspective. Invitations to community gatherings, charity events, and even academic conferences began to appear on his modest doorstep. At one such event held in a renovated town hall that buzzed with anticipation, Edwin stood before an audience comprising local leaders, scholars, and everyday citizens. He spoke of the many missteps and misunderstandings that had shadowed his life, but also of the unexpected joy that sometimes emerged from the depths of despair. I have learned that wealth does not always reside in what we count in banks, he explained softly to the rapt crowd, but in the resilience of the human spirit, in our ability to forgive, to laugh, and to walk forward even after the harshest storms. His words reverberated through the hall, evoking tears and nods of agreement, as if a collective memory of long-buried sorrows had been stirred awake. In this period of transformation, both Edwin and Judge Barber found themselves at a crossroads of personal redemption and public responsibility. The judge, whose earlier chortle had seemed such a stark betrayal of the solemnity required in a courtroom, now embraced it as a cautionary symbol, a reminder that within every moment of levity lay the potential to reshape destinies. In quiet moments after court sessions, he was known to mutter to himself about how life often presents puzzles that defy simple answers, urging him to look deeper into the very core of justice. Meanwhile, Edwin began quietly contributing to local charities and became a frequent visitor at Maple Hollow's community centers. His life, once defined by isolation and melancholy, slowly transformed into a beacon of hope and transformation. In whispered conversations in local cafes, people recounted the day when the poor defendant had revealed that he was not a victim of misfortune at all, but rather a man whose wealth, hidden away like a sleeping giant, had the power to change lives. The ensuing months brought about a series of restorative acts that rippled through the community. Edwin and other townsfolk collaborated to establish scholarship funds and community art programs, turning what was once a tale of sorrow into a story of inspiration and transformation. The judge, too, became a pivot for renewed dialogue on the nature of second chances in the justice system. In late-night meetings with civic leaders, he insisted that every single decision made in that hallowed courtroom carry the weight of compassion, acknowledging that sometimes the surface was but a thin veil concealing a far richer, more complex truth. As autumn deepened into winter, Maple Hollow embraced the season of change not with despair but with a renewed sense of wonder. Snowflakes began to settle over cobblestone streets, and in the glow of lamplight, the town's citizens found solace in newfound beginnings. In the soft silence of a winter's dusk, Judge Barber sat in his study, pen in hand, reflecting upon the bittersweet irony of it all. A single laugh, spontaneous and unguarded, had sparked a cascade of events that upended the established order and invited an exploration of both injustice and redemption. In the flickering firelight, he mused that sometimes a moment's vulnerability could lead to a reckoning grander than any conventional verdict, and that true justice was measured not only by the laws that govern society, but also by the empathy that embraced its citizens. For Edwin Lowe, the journey from rags to an unimaginable fortune was not marked by sudden triumph, but by a series of quiet, deliberate choices that underscored the resilience of the human spirit. In the gentle cadence of everyday life, he chose forgiveness over resentment, hope over despair. And in doing so, he not only transformed his own destiny but also rekindled a deeper understanding in a community that had once judged him solely by his outward appearances. Maple Hollow would never be the same again, for in a twist of fate that seemed choreographed by the very hand of destiny, the narrative of one man had rewritten what it meant to be truly wealthy. The day finally arrived when the reconfigured trial reached its denouement. In a packed courtroom bathed in the soft glow of filtered sunlight, Judge Barber delivered his final remarks. His voice carried a gentle firmness as he recounted the extraordinary journey that had unfolded, a journey that spanned sorrow and laughter, regret and redemption. "We have witnessed in this case," he intoned solemnly, "how society sometimes fails to see the entirety of a human soul, a soul that, despite its humble exterior, may harbor storms and wonders beyond the ken of our immediate perception." With those words, the judge pronounced a resolution that not only absolved Edwin of the minor infractions with a directive for community service, but also recognized the potential for transformation inherent in every fall from grace. In that moment, as tears of relief mingled with quiet smiles in the courtroom, the weight of assumptions was lifted. The poor defendant, whom many had pitied and scorned, was indeed a billionaire in more than just monetary terms. His real wealth lay in the lessons he had imparted about resilience, humility, and the infinite capacity for reinvention. In the following days, as Maple Hollow began to heal and hope flourished in unexpected places, residents reflected on the curious intersections of fate and justice. They recalled that fleeting moment when a judge's laugh became the catalyst for a profound revelation, reminding them that life often wears its richest colors on the canvas of the most unanticipated moments. Weeks turned into months, and the legacy of the case continued to influence both local policies and the broader understanding of justice in the region. Judge Barber, now more perceptive than ever, took to public speaking with a renewed fervor, emphasizing the importance of empathy, meticulous consideration, and the willingness to embrace one's own humanity, even when bound by the strictures of law. In countless addresses delivered at community centers, schools, and even on the steps of the old town hall, he urged citizens to look beyond first impressions, to seek the unexplored corners of every individual's life, and to remember that a single laugh, however misplaced it might seem, could sometimes reveal hidden truths that challenge and enrich our collective understanding of what it means to be human. Edwin Lowe's life, now interwoven with the common narrative of redemption and possibility, blossomed into something far greater than mere financial recovery. He used his wealth judiciously, establishing philanthropic initiatives that focused on educating the underprivileged, supporting local artisans, and fostering community dialogue around issues that had once divided people. His own journey, marked by trials and unexpected triumphs, became a legacy that inspired not only those who had once turned their backs on him, but also the very institutions that had once sealed his fate with decayed assumptions. In quiet moments, when the frosted windows of his modest yet dignified home glowed with the soft lights of a winter evening, Edwin often reflected on the long and winding path that had brought him here. He remembered the bitterness of loss, the ache of humiliation, and even the quiet laughter of a judge who had inadvertently become part of his transformative story. And in those recollections, he found that every thread of pain had been woven into a tapestry of wisdom and strength, a tapestry that he now shared generously with those who, like him, had once been lost in the shadows of misfortune. Even as spring slowly awakened Maple Hollow from its winter slumber, the echoes of that extraordinary case continued to reverberate through the narrow streets, in coffee shop conversations, and in the gentle cadence of everyday life. The great irony had become a cherished parable among the locals, a reminder that fortune and misfortune, justice and mercy, often walked hand in hand along the twisting corridors of fate. And so it was that by the end of that transformative year, the town had become a place not solely defined by its quaint buildings or its ancient traditions, but by the deep-seated understanding that every human life harbored mysteries and untold riches that defied superficial judgment. In the twilight of another busy day on the courthouse steps, as the sun dipped below a horizon tinged with brilliant hues of orange and purple, Judge Barber lingered for a moment in quiet meditation. His memory traced back to that pivotal courtroom incident, the moment when a simple laugh had unraveled a destiny. With a reflective smile, he acknowledged that the true measure of justice was not in the rigid enforcement of rules, but in the compassionate recognition of a life's complexity. It was a lesson he now carried with solemn pride, one that had not only altered the fate of a downtrodden defendant, but had also reshaped his own understanding of mercy and humanity. Thus, as Maple Hollow continued its slow, steady beat through the seasons, a town reborn through shared struggles and collective triumphs, the story of Edwin Lowell and Judge Barber remained etched in its heart. The lesson was clear. Beneath every exterior lay potential undiscovered. Every misfortune held seeds of renewal, and even a moment of unexpected laughter might herald a miraculous change. The legacy of that case transcended the confines of any courtroom. It wove itself into the very fabric of Maple Hollow, inspiring future generations to approach each life with both discernment and compassion. In that serene twilight light, as the courthouse doors closed and the town settled into another quiet night, it was evident that true wealth was not always measured in currency. The lives touched by Edwin Lowell's Renaissance, and by the judge who had come to see the error of superficial judgments, stood as monuments to the resilience and transformative power of the human spirit. And for all who whispered about that unusual court case, the memory of a single laugh had become a beacon of hope, a reminder that within every heart lay the untold promise of redemption and renewal. As the final chapter in this long, winding tale closed, the legacy of Judge Barber's sincere smile and Edwin Lowell's reborn dignity continued to illuminate Maple Hollow like the steady light of 1,000 candles. Their intertwined fates reinforced a timeless truth. No matter how deeply shadows may fall, even the smallest spark of laughter or the gentlest act of compassion can ignite a force that transforms lives and communities alike. And so, in the quiet murmur of the town's nightly embrace, the story endured. A story of misjudgment, mistaken assumptions, and the unexpected emergence of a billionaire not solely counted in dollars and cents, but recognized in the currency of human perseverance, hope, and love. This narrative, woven from the threads of irony and redemption, left an indelible mark that echoed far beyond the confines of a single courtroom, inviting every listener to reconsider the hidden depths and unexpected fortunes that reside within every life. In the fullness of time, as new cases emerged and fresh faces graced the precincts of the Maple Hollow Courthouse, none could forget the day when a judge's transient laugh led to an extraordinary discovery, a testament to the fact that in a world rife with uncertainty, the true metrics of success and worth often defy the boundaries of what the eye alone might discern. In that lesson, both judge and defendant, along with an entire community, embraced the realization that every ending may harbor the promise of a new beginning, and every moment, no matter how fleeting, may contain the seeds of destiny. And so, with the gentle cadence of whispered memories and the steadfast hope for a kinder tomorrow, the story of Judge Barber and Edwin Lowe became a timeless parable etched into the soul of Maple Hollow, a narrative that, like the turning of the seasons, would continue to inspire, challenge, and warm the hearts of all who dared to look beyond the surface and see the extraordinary potential within every life.